Hello and welcome. I'm Sema Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Ukraine's acting energy minister Artem Nekrasov has said that around 180,000 consumers were left without electricity supplies across 5 Ukrainian regions after a Russian attack overnight. Russia's foreign ministry has said that it hoped that US President Donald Trump's administration did not make a fatal mistake over Venezuela and said that Moscow was concerned about US decisions that threatened international navigation as Trump ordered a blockade towards Venezuela on Tuesday. French, Saudi Arabian and American officials will hold talks with the head of the Lebanese army in Paris today. The talks are aimed at finalizing a roadmap to enable a mechanism for the disarmament of the Hezbollah, as Israel continues to breach the fragile ceasefire. The U.S. Senate has voted to pass the Department of Defense budget bill for fiscal year 2026, which included the repeal of the Caesars Act imposed on Syria since 2019. The bill won the support of 77 senators as Syria's Minister of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates Assad Hassan al-Shaibani thanked the U.S. Senate. The World Bank and Syria's Ministry of Agriculture has begun discussions on a support program aimed at addressing key priorities in the country's agricultural sector. They met via video conference, including Isabel Liu, the bank's agriculture sector lead for Syria and Lebanon. British police said a court hearing for Britain's Duke of Marlborough, Charles James Spencer Churchill, is charged with 3 counts of intentional strangulation was adjourned. However, a new hearing date has yet to be announced. The United States approved a record $11.1 billion arms package for Taiwan, including HIMARS rocket systems. This comes as Taipei plans an additional $40 billion in defense spending, which could further strain U.S.-China relations. The rebel movement M23 has announced its exit from the strategically important city of Uvira in eastern DRC. This reportedly comes at the request of American mediators in the conflict between the M23 and the armed forces of the DRC. Now we start this hour with EU. Farmers are clashing with police outside the European Parliament in Brussels as they protest against the EU's planned trade deal with the South American bloc Mercosur. Farmers worry that the Mercosur deal will see them undercut by a flow of cheaper goods from agricultural giant Brazil and its neighbors. Meanwhile, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and European Council President Antonio Costa are meeting with farming union representatives concerning the Mercosur deal. The EU is seeking to diversify its trade links in the face of US President Donald Trump's tariffs and fierce Chinese competition. However, France and Italy are pushing to postpone the signing due to the opposition from the politically sensitive agricultural sector. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Sander van Hoorn. He's a former EU correspondent, joins us live from Amsterdam. Thank you very much, Mr. Sander, for joining us again. Good to see you. What more can you tell us about what's ongoing with Mercosur and EU? We can only speculate here, but do you think there are chances that the EU leaders could come in the middle ground with the farmers?
Well, I think it's likely because the agreement has been 25 years in the making, long negotiations, back and forth. And now we seem to be, according to EU diplomats, in the final stretch. So the talk is about the adjustments that can be made last minute to accommodate the farmers, the angry farmers, for example, or the German car industry. But that's not so much changes to the actual agreement, to the trade agreement, but more internal agreements between member states to compensate, for example, those farmers. So as long as it's not about like the core of the text, I think maybe not this summit, but anytime soon there will be an agreement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sander van Hoorn, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we stay on this topic. Now, farmers from northern France are joining a convoy of hundreds of tractors from across Europe driving towards Brussels to protest against the EU agriculture policy and trade deal with the South American bloc Mercosur. The protest targets, in particular, the proposed free trade agreement with the Mercosur bloc, which farmers say threatens their livelihoods, as the deal will see them undercut by a flow of cheaper goods from agricultural giant Brazil and its neighbors. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Sander van Hoorn. He's a former EU correspondent, joins us live from Amsterdam. Thank you very much, Mr. Sander van Hoorn, for staying with us. You know, like you rightfully mentioned that this has been taking 25 years in making. So can I assume that in 25 years they have covered everything, including protecting the rights of EU farmers? So why are these farmers worried now?
Because they are unhappy about more than one thing. Mercosur is of course a big stumbling block, but they are also worried about cheaper imports from Ukraine. An import exemption for Ukraine is also being discussed. And they're worried to changing agricultural policy of the EU in general. The way it's being financed, it's the biggest chunk of EU money goes to agriculture. So the way that is being financed, who gets money, on what conditions, that's all up for discussion. So farmers have been on the edge for a couple of years now, and Mercosur is just the latest worry they have, and therefore not only from France but also neighboring countries, they gathered in the Rue de la Loi, which is the big street connecting all the EU institutions, and it's exactly the place where the European Commission is, where the 27 member states are meeting as we speak.
Right, and do you think that these people will be represented in the discussions with, you know, like I know that only 2 leaders will be joining the discussions with the agriculture representatives?
Well, it's not the least leaders. For example, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has spoken with a delegation of these farmers, and there is talk about some exemptions for EU farmers when they are being confronted with cheaper imports from the Mercosur countries. So there is talk about compensating these farmers in case their worries may come true. But there's also bigger interest. For example, the German car industry wanting to sell cars in Latin America under these favorable conditions that are also in Mercosur. So that's why there's a lot of pressure to make this happen after 25 years, but indeed be sensitive to EU farmers and compensate them where possible.
Very insightful. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Van Hoorn for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we stay in Europe. French President Emmanuel Macron has said that Europe will present a unified position at this week's EU summit on financing Ukraine's war effort. EU leaders are expected to discuss using frozen Russian assets and providing Ukraine with financial support for its ongoing resistance. The discussion will focus on technical solutions, including loans, while ensuring solidarity among member states. Macron has emphasized that collective decision-making is essential to respect all countries' views. Let's listen in.
Qui ont été mises sur la table par la Commission européenne et des discussions importantes qui ont été engagées pour utiliser ces actifs gelés russes. Je veux ici dire qu'on doit rassembler tout le monde. On trouvera une position qui permettra de décider. Et c'est pour moi l'objectif de ce Conseil. On doit donner de la visibilité à l'Ukraine, on doit permettre de continuer de mener l'effort de résistance et nous devons être là en soutien pour construire une paix juste et durable. En Européens, nous avons sécurisé l'immobilisation de ces actifs gelés. C'est une très bonne chose, ça s'est fait. Maintenant, on doit sécuriser un financement par un prêt. On va trouver la solution technique. Et donc, il ne faut pas se diviser sur des modalités techniques, il faut que chacun soit respecté et entendu. Donc on va avoir la discussion avec notre collègue belge, avec tous nos collègues. Moi je veux que le travail soit collectif, apaisé, mais je suis confiant sur le fait qu'on va trouver une solution parce que les Européens sont unis dans ça.
The summit comes amid tensions with Russia. President Vladimir Putin has condemned European plan as piracy and property theft, while Russian officials have warned that they may seize remaining Western assets in retaliation. Russia's central bank also threatened legal action to recover both the value of frozen Russian assets and alleged lost profits. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Sander van Hoorn. He's a former EU correspondent, joins us live from Amsterdam. Thank you very much, Mr. Van Hoorn, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, what is President Macron's emphasis on a unified European position? What does this timing reveal about current EU's approach? As some of our guests mentioned, they're very skeptical about EU's alignment towards supporting Ukraine further with frozen Russian assets, and some of our guests say that they are aligned. What's your take?
I think they're aligned, but the matter is where to take the money from to support Ukraine. Like general collective loans by EU member states is out of the questions because, for example, the Netherlands are opposed to it. Just giving money to Ukraine is opposed by, for example, Hungary. But the problem is that as long as you take decisions that require unanimity, there's always countries against. So there are ways, for example, to do it with a qualified majority, but sidestepping Belgium that way, which is still opposing taking the frozen Russian assets as the base for a loan to EU countries, that is something Macron doesn't want to do. He wants to include Belgium because it's so important for them. And when he talks about this week reaching a decision, we're on Thursday now in the European Union, and that does not mean that they will finish today. It might be late into the night, but I've heard colleagues speak about finishing on Saturday, so it may take long.
Right, and lastly, Mr. Van Hoorn, looking at what political risks does this mean if they decide to use Russian assets, frozen assets, and how might Russia's warnings of legal action and asset seizures, do you think this could influence the EU's decision?
It depends whom you ask, really. I mean, like the countries that are really for taking these frozen assets say that eventually this money will have to be used by Russia to compensate Ukraine, so better use it now and there's no legal risk, they say. Others, however, think that risk is still there, and the risk may be that the EU may end up having to pay Russia all that money that they take today. So whom is liable at that time? So that is basically a discussion, and there's the more fundamental discussion about stability. When you put money through Europe in a trading system, which is basically what it is, then it should be reliable. You should not have to worry about your assets, whether you're Russia or any other country. It goes to the credibility of the EU as a trading partner, and that's something that worries some people in Brussels as well. So there's more than one way to look at it.
Very insightful and timely. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Sander van Hoorn for joining us today as a former EU correspondent from Amsterdam. Now we move on to Poland. Polish Defense Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz has announced that Poland has achieved full operational readiness of its Patriot air defense system, marking a key milestone in the country's integrated air and missile defense strategy. The Wisla program, Poland's top-tier air defense initiative, is built around Patriot missile systems, LTAMDS radars, and the IBC's S-Command network. Future phases will integrate systems like the F-35 into a unified air defense architecture. The U.S. ambassador to Poland, Thomas Rose, who attended the ceremony, has praised Poland's leadership in air defense. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Keith Vaz. He's a former British minister, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mr. Keith Vaz, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, how significant is this, and what does Poland's achievement of full operational readiness for its air defense system, what does this signal?
Well, it's a good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Asuma from London.
Thank
It's a big step. Poland has really come out of the shadows and become a leading European power under the leadership of Donald Tusk. And it's very clear that they don't want to leave it to the Americans and NATO and anyone else. They want to be in a position where they can defend themselves. So I think it's highly significant that they've managed to get this kind of capability independently without asking anyone else, but just proceeding as they have done on the basis that they've done it. So they should be congratulated for being able to do this. What they do with the system, of course, is a separate matter. We don't know. Presumably it's because of what's happening in Ukraine. They want to be on the ready side rather than any other side. So let us see whether or not they are used. But it is a significant step that they've decided to do this.
100%. And you know, when I see Poland leading in this particular race, where I cannot stop thinking that it must be trying best to not repeat what happened to it in Second World War and also First World War. What's your take?
Well, the Second World War is a long way off now. It's 75 years, 80 years away. So you're right, this is a consideration for them, what happened then. But I think they're much more concerned, Asuma, with what is happening now. Now Europe is in turmoil, and therefore they feel it's really important that they should be independent and strong in their own right. And this is the right way to do it. It's their own money, it's their capability, it's on their soil. They're not involving anyone else in this. So Donald Tusk has learned a lot from his leadership of the European Union, and now we're seeing it really come to fruition.
Yes, and do you think this will be followed by any other country in Europe?
Well, I think Britain already has this capability, so has France. Germany, of course, has not. But who knows? The Visegrad Four, which are the countries that are near and around Poland, may all want the capability. But at the end of the day, who can pay for it, who can afford it, and what are they going to do with it? Poland is clear what it is going to do with it, but I'm not sure about other countries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keith Vass, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to South America, the Kremlin has urged countries in the region to exercise restraint over Venezuela, warning that rising tensions could lead to unpredictable and potentially dangerous developments. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has emphasized that Russia maintains ongoing contacts with Venezuela, describing the country as an ally and partner. Peskov has noted that Russian President Vladimir Putin recently spoke with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro by phone. The call and ongoing dialogue highlights Moscow's close ties with Caracas amid increasing international pressure on Maduro's government. The statement comes as the United States has recently intensified diplomatic and economic measures against Venezuela, highlighting regional tensions and drawing Russia into the discussion. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Keith Vass. He's a former British minister, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mr. Keith Vass, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, can you tell us a little bit about why Russia has decided to, back Venezuela like this in public at this moment?
Well, it's got a long history with Venezuela. This is not a new relationship that they've discovered. They are not a guarantor of the safety of Venezuela, but they are friends, and they must feel it necessary to speak up on Venezuela's behalf, because what is happening there is very difficult to fathom. What we seem to be seeing is that there is indiscriminate bombing of ships going through the going through the Caribbean, and people are very alarmed about that. So I would imagine this is a warning shot to the Americans that they should not do anything further on this.
And how does Russia's this relationship? You said it's not just now, but it's a long-standing relationship with Venezuela. How do you think this affects regional stability in Latin America?
Well, they seem to have the support of they seem to have the support of
Brazil.
a number of countries around there, the region. You said Brazil. You're right. Brazil is one of them. Mexico is another. I think the president there has issued a statement saying, think again, go to the UN. So Venezuela is not a massively popular country in South America, but it does have allies. And the worry would be is first you take down Venezuela and then they can come after you. So I think it is essential that they then take this matter forward and see what can be done.
And in what ways does this ongoing dialogue, we only know about this phone call, but between Putin and Maduro, how do you think this is shaping international responses to pressure on Venezuela's government?
Well, I think for President Maduro, this is very helpful to have President Putin ringing him, because it shows that there is support, and he will need that backing, because there are no other major powers backing him at the moment.
Very insightful. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Keith Vass for joining us today as a former British minister from London. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Africa. Egyptian scientists have discovered fossils of an ancient crocodile species in the Western Desert, shedding new light on crocodiles' evolution in North Africa. Paleontologists uncovered the earliest known member of the Drysauridae family, a group of long-snouted coastal and marine crocodiles that lived around 80 million years ago. The newly identified species, named Wadisuchus kasabi, was excavated near the Karga Baris oasis. Researchers found partial skulls and snout fragments from 4 individuals at different growth stages. Scientists say the discovery fills a major gap in the fossil record from the late Cretaceous period. The reptile is believed to have grown up to 4 meters long, with a narrow snout and sharp teeth, traits that later helped similar species survive after the extinctions of dinosaurs. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates.